Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. I'm going to take you through the two examples you'll notice over here, exercise 1 and exercise 2. I'm going to take you through the process to get everything set up that you need so that as you're watching the eMath instruction video, you can kind of follow along with what we've already set up on the calculator, and you can listen more to his explanations and the vocab and how to interpret some things based on what it is that you're looking at. So we'll just kind of set these problems up together. So if you have your TI-nspire, that's what we're going to focus on. We'll enter everything in through there, and we'll end up having 4 pages. And then I'll show you how you're able to just kind of scroll back and forth as you watch his video. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go new document. We're going to do exercise 1. So I'm going to open a list and spreadsheet. And the first thing I'm going to do is call my X values and my Y values. I'm just going to call them X1 and Y1 to represent that first example. And then I'm just going to go ahead and enter these in. So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And if you want to pause the video and just enter them on your own, that's perfectly fine. 0, 5, 46, 60, 68, 72, and 74. And then, sometimes it's good to always go back and just kind of glance, make sure we've got everything entered in there correctly so that we don't have any mistakes. All right, so far that's, a skill that we did last week we should be comfortable with. Uh, he's going to reference that R value, that correlation coefficient that represents kind of the strength of the relationship for us. So let's kind of go through that process where we go menu, statistics, stat calculation, and then we'll do a linear regression. This is going to be X1 and Y1. That's the set of data that I'm using. And then if you'll notice here, there's your slope, there's your y-intercept, and if I scroll down, here's my R value. All right, so those are the things that he'll kind of reference in his video. So just kind of taking you through that. So you'll have all of that kind of on this page 1.1. The portion of the lesson that's going to be new is what we call the residual. And he's going to outline and define a lot of that. I'm just going to show you here how to create that and set that up on your calculator so that you can then kind of listen and follow along with how you'll interpret it and utilize it and that sort of thing. All right, so in order to get the residual, what I need to do is I need to add a new page. So I'm going to go Control Doc, which allows me to add a new page, and I'm going to select Data and Statistics. And this is kind of like I think I showed you last week, the scatter plot. I'm going to come down here. You'll notice all these things because we already did a stat calculation, but I want this to be X1 along the X-axis, and I want this to be Y1 along the Y-axis, so that I'm looking at this kind of scatter plot. One of the things that he'll talk about is you can look at this and say, okay, does it look like you could fit it with a line? It'd be a decent fit, that sort of thing. And then if I want to, even on this scatter plot, I can go menu, analyze, and if you go with regression, you can show linear mx plus b. And so that actually gives you the equation right there. What that doesn't show you is the R value, so the strength of the relationship. But that's all right, we've got it on that page 1.1. So once I have this scatter plot set up, and once I've shown the linear regression here, then that allows us to be able to show what we call a residual plot. And here's kind of the process we go through for that. We're going to go back to menu. We're going to go analyze. And now once we have the regression on there, you'll notice right below it is residual. And then it says show residual plot. So if I click on that, here's my scatter plot. It gives me, what my line of best fit is. There's my, the data. And this is the residual plot, which he's going to talk about more in depth in the video. And so you'll be able to just look at this and use it as a reference as he's interpreting things that you need throughout that lesson. So you'll have everything set up. So don't delete anything or close out your calculator or anything. Keep this stuff right there because you can go to 1.1 and you can check out, as he's entering stuff. Here's our table of values. Go to page 1.2, and that's going to show you the scatter plot and the residual plot for you to do some interpreting from. All right, so that sets everything up that you need for exercise 1. And then what we're going to do here is just kind of set everything else up for this second exercise right down here so that you have all of that ready to go for the second video. So to get a new page, Control Doc, I want to go List in Spreadsheet. And notice how this is page 1.3. Still have page 1.1, 1.2. So now 1.3 is where our second problem is going to start. So I'm going to call this X2 and Y2. So those are my input and output values for the second example. And then I'm going to go ahead and enter those in. 3, 7, 2, 11, 8, 16, 5, and 9. So I've got all my X values in there, and then I'll go ahead and put my Y values in. 78, 80, 75, 94, 89, 92, 80, and 84. And once again, you might want to just glance kind of through there, make sure that you're seeing some things that are accurate. That's what we want ultimately, is to make sure that we can get everything that we need into the calculator as accurately as possible. All right, so we'll just do a quick little stat calculation. So menu, statistics, stat calculation, linear regression, mx plus b. Make sure you choose x2 and y2, so be careful of that process. This is the second example, so I'm using my input and output values for the second example. I'll hit OK. There's my slope, there's my y-intercept, and if I just scroll down here, that tells me my r value, and he'll kind of talk a little bit about the interpretation that you're seeing there from that particular r value. All right, so that gets everything that we need there on 1.3. So then what we want to do is create the scatter plot, the line of best fit, and then be able to show the residual plot so that you can interpret everything that you need for the lesson. All right, so Control Doc to add a new page, and this will be data and statistics. Down here at the bottom, remember this is the second example, so I want to make sure we have now 2 stat calculations in there. So I'm going to go X2, and over here on the y-axis is scroll down a little bit if you need to, and select Y2. Okay, so here's our scatter plot. I want the line of best fit, so menu, analyze, we'll do a linear regression. So mx plus b, linear mx plus b. There's my equation. And notice that slope and y-intercept should match what we just did a little bit ago on that page 1.3. And once we have this line of best fit in there, then the calculator is able to do a residual plot for us. So we'll go menu, analyze, residuals, and then we'll go residual plot. And that'll show us everything that we need to be able to make some interpretations from that information. All right, so that really sets everything up for your video that you're going to watch next. So, don't lose or close out the calculator there. Keep all that stuff handy. Remember 1.3 and 1.4, that went with example 2. If you hit the little arrow up here, that'll scroll you through, and that gets you back to 1.1 and 1.2. So as you get ready to start that video, that's kind of where you want to be set up at. All right. The last thing that I'm going to show you here is just a sample problem from one of the Khan Academies. The Khan Academies that go along with the residuals, a lot of it's interpretation. There's a couple of questions that will ask you to do some calculating. So I just want to show you one of those here quick. All right, so I got rid of the calculator and the sample data, and he does a really good job of outlining this process to go along with example 2. So if you get kind of stuck, you can always go back and reference example 2. But here's kind of the idea. The fuel consortium chairman at an airport recorded the cost per barrel of crude oil and the cost per barrel of jet fuel each week. After plotting the results, notice the relationship was fairly linear, so he used that data to calculate his line of best fit, essentially, is what we're talking about here for predicting the cost. So this is the equation that would model that line of best fit once they had their data presented in the scatter plot. All right, so it's going to be used to predict what the cost of jet fuel will be. Okay, so it's going to predict the cost of jet fuel using the barrel of crude oil. So essentially right down here, what you notice is that $60 is the cost for a barrel of crude oil, and $78 then is your cost for jet fuel. All right, so if you remember from the video, it talks about what's been observed versus what has been predicted. So in this case, this is the observed value, and what we want to do, it says what is the residual of a week in which the barrel was 60 and the jet fuel was 78. So what I want to do is take this observed value of $60 and I want to plug it in to see what this predicted model would tell me or anticipate it to be. So what I end up with is something that calculation-wise looks kind of like this. All right, 7.6 and then times 60. This one isn't too bad. I could do a little mental math because this would divide out to give me 10. 10 times 7 is 70, plus 2 is 72. All right. And so this is the predicted value. That's what the model predicts based on a $60 gallon or $60 barrel for crude oil. It predicts $72 for jet fuel. All right. But we know the observed cost of the jet fuel was 78. So if you remember in the video, we do observed minus the predicted. And so in this case, 78 minus 72 gives me a value of 6. So when it asks about what is the residual of a week, that residual would be $6. Really, what's the error or the difference between what's been observed and what the model is predicting? So go ahead and check that, and that turned out pretty good. So just kind of takes you through a sample of one of those questions. The other residual questions, a lot of that is interpretation. So make sure as you're watching the eMath video that you're kind of alert to the types of interpretations that you need to be able to make from a residual plot, understanding what a residual is, and when values are above and below that line of best fit, how we interpret those types of predictions and what that stuff means. All right, so hopefully this helps you out. And then once again, if you're looking at that calculator, you've got everything set up here on pages 1 and 2 for example 1, and then everything on pages 3 and 4 is set up for example 2. So make sure you don't lose out on that.